Hold a simple, chipped stone in your hand. For over 1 million years, this was the peak of human technology. Then, look at the perfectly aligned brick avenues of an ancient megacity. The leap from that rock to this metropolis is the defining mystery of early human history. That transition began when people first figured out how to plant seeds. At places like Mehrgarh in modern-day Pakistan, hunter-gatherers settled down to grow wheat and barley. Over thousands of years, those small farming villages scaled up into the massive urban centers of the Indus Valley. Looking at these ruins, you can see how sophisticated they became. 4,000 years ago, these cities were meticulously planned, with grid streets, uniform brick sizes, standardized weights for trade, and even underground drainage systems that rival modern plumbing. Mastering the combination of agriculture and early metallurgy, specifically bronze, allowed these populations to generate enough resources to support tens of thousands of citizens in one place. The limits of a society's size were directly dictated by the tools they held in their hands. But around 1900 BCE, those bustling brick streets went entirely quiet. The Indus Valley cities emptied out, the culture scattered, and the writing they left behind on clay seals remains an unsolved mystery. Without those central hubs, human settlement on the subcontinent scaled back down. People dispersed into much smaller, rural farming communities across the landscape, relying on a mix of copper and stone tools. Curious, leaning in, building back to that urban scale required a catalyst more durable and effective than anything they currently had. Humanity had reached a technological ceiling. To push past it, to build something larger and more complex than the Indus Valley, they needed a new material, one that could withstand the heavy soils of the river basins. Around 1000 BCE, that material arrived. Iron functioned as an agricultural breakthrough long before it became a dominant military one. The Ganga River basin was heavily forested and incredibly difficult to penetrate. The copper tools of the past would bend or break against the dense wood, but heavy iron axes could slice right through, allowing settlers to clear massive tracts of land. Once the trees were gone, iron-tipped plows could bite deeply into the heavy, fertile soil. The result was a massive increase in crop yields. For the first time in centuries, society was producing vastly more food than it needed. This surplus allowed people to stop farming and specialize. They became artisans crafting goods, or merchants trading those goods across long distances. This economic shift gave rise to a second wave of urbanization. This map illustrates the political reality of that surplus. The new wealth allowed small tribes to absorb one another, rapidly illuminating the landscape with 16 massive regional kingdoms, the Mahajanapadas, all competing for control of the north. A simple upgrade in tool material terraformed the environment and laid the groundwork for complex economies. However, this new wealth created deep friction. The established Vedic society was built on expensive rituals and a hierarchy that prioritized the priesthood. This structure excluded the merchant class, who held economic power but had no corresponding social status. These merchants sought an alternative, a path to status that didn't depend on costly sacrifices or birthright. This demand for a logical, accessible way of life invited thinkers to challenge the old establishment. One major response came from Mahavira, who popularized Jainism. He offered a doctrine based on absolute non-violence and extreme self-control, suggesting that spiritual purity was earned through action, not ritual. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, also offered a logical diagnosis for human suffering. He proposed the middle path, a way to find peace through mental discipline and moral behavior, rather than through the rigid social hierarchies of the past. The iron tools had revolutionized the economy, and as that economy outgrew the old social order, it forced a revolution in how people viewed their world. The wealth generated in the Ganga Basin made it a prime target for military conquest. When Alexander the Great retreated from the subcontinent, he left behind a power vacuum in the northwest that was ripe for the taking. A young strategist named Chandragupta Maurya seized that moment. He took control of the northwest, defeated the Nanda kings of the Ganga Basin, and united the territory into the subcontinent's first true empire. This economic explosion reached far beyond the north. Excavations at southern sites like Kizadati have uncovered silver and bronze coins, including foreign currency, proving a vast trade network was tying these early empires to the Mediterranean and beyond. The Mauryan state was a centralized bureaucracy designed to harvest that agricultural surplus and convert it into a continent-spanning tax base. It was a society functioning at a scale previously impossible to manage. Chandragupta's grandson, Ashoka, inherited this massive machine, but after launching a devastating war to conquer the region of Kalinga, the sheer scale of the casualty lists triggered a crisis of conscience in the emperor. Ashoka realized a limitation of his power. Military force and iron weapons are effective for conquering territory, but they are insufficient for maintaining social cohesion across such a diverse population. He pivoted to Dana, a code of moral conduct and public welfare. He broadcasted these new laws on massive stone pillars across his domain, shifting authority from the sword to a shared set of ethics. Ashoka's records suggest that a society of this size relies less on the sharpness of its blades and more on the shared logic of its citizens. The history of ancient India proves that while iron can build an empire, its endurance depends on the strength of its ideas.